Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Diptii Shah and welcome to my show, Artistry. Today I have with me a doctor turned author, editor, and an artist, Ms. Shivani Salil. Hello, Shivani, and welcome to my show.
Hi, Dipti. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for the introduction. It
My
ticks all the
pleasure.
boxes that I thought of. Thank you.
My pleasure, Shivani. So, Shivani, tell me, how did this transition from a full-time doctor at KEM Hospital in Mumbai to an author, a published author, editor, and now an artist in Hong Kong? How did this transition happen?
Um, a lot of it started without realizing what I am getting into. I wanted to write always, but then on the way somewhere I became a doctor, which is also something I wanted because a lot of people now question me about that. That were my parents forcing me? If they were forcing me, I think it was to the contra of it. They did not want me to become a doctor because they knew that it's a lot of struggle. So I'm completely clean over there that this is what I wanted. At the same time, I always wanted to write, but medicine is a full time job. It's only in 2017, around the time when you start realizing you're turning 40, you feel you need to shake things up a bit because they've become too mundane, too routine. And that's when I started writing. I was still working in KM at that time. I did not know what's going to come from there because I did not even know how to blog. I just opened a WordPress free blog and I started off. The first one gave way to the other. Two people read it first. I mean, it was, of course, the family who had to suffer first. And gradually, I think people liked it. So I kept on writing day after day. I started following people who had a similar graph, so to say, and I discovered more platforms like Mom's Presso was there, Women's Rep was there to begin with. And then it obviously it gave you more outreach and more confidence to write. In the meantime, 2018, my husband moved to Hong Kong and we followed him. So I knew somewhere that since degrees are not valid here, I'll have to change, I'll have to look for a parallel profession which includes medicine in some form. And but since I was writing and enjoying it so much, and I also wanted to give time for my daughter to settle down, I thought I'll give myself a year to see how it goes. And in that year, I started writing about partition, a lot of short stories. I started compiling them. I think in 2019, there was a blogging challenge. So, wherein you have to write one blog every day. So, that seemed very simple to begin with. And I had a theme in mind. Partition was something that was very close to my heart. I started publishing one blog every day. It was quite a tough time, I would say, but the discipline was amazing, and also the kick that I got out of it. The kick that I got out of writing was, I mean, I haven't had that kind of adrenaline rush since the time I might have been, I might have been in my internship. When you see a child being born, or for the first time during internship, or when you conduct a surgery, a similar high I felt while I was writing these blogs. Again, since it was a different topic, it gave way to so people told me you shouldn't have published blogs. You should have compiled them and taken out a book. I still thought it's not a bad idea. Why not now? So I took off all the blogs and then I went around with my manuscript. One of the publishers accepted it, and the book was out in August 2019. So that is how Hiraeth, Partition Stories from 1947 came out.
So, Shivani, once you were writing these blogs about partition, how did that transition into actually coming out with a full-blown book?
People liked it, they appreciated. In fact, some of them said, why did you publish those blogs? You shouldn't have done that. You should have compiled them and you should have sent the manuscript across. I felt, what's the harm doing that now after publishing them? So once the month was over, on 30th April, I took off all my blogs from my website and I started editing the manuscript, sent it across to some publishers. One of them accepted it. And that's how Hidayat was born. The stories from 1947. That's how it came across. It was very simple actually. It was very organic, so to say. I hadn't planned any of this, and I'm glad that it happened the way it did. Yeah.
So, Shivani, tell us about the word meaning of Hidayat. It is such a beautiful sounding word.
It is, yeah. In fact, a lot of people assume it's Persian or Urdu. It's actually a Welsh word, which means that there's they say that there is no translation if you ask a Welsh person, but the closest we can come to it is something that you really long for, a house or a place which may or may not exist, or something that you cannot go back to. So it's that longing, the feeling of that feeling of belonging somewhere but not to be able to go back. And why I named this was because both sets of my grandparents, I think, and all the people who moved across borders, they must have felt like this all their lives about the land that they left.
So I understand that this story is very personal to you. Was it very difficult to write it?
Truthfully, no, because I think it was being somewhere, all these years, it was somewhere inside me waiting to come out. So for me, it was more like a release. So how you feel that, when you've been carrying something around with you for a while and you don't even know it. It's only when you keep down that luggage, you realize how light you feel. I think that's how I felt. I felt lighter, in fact. I have never felt freer and happier that they're out there in the world for people to peruse and to remember these stories. I think for me, it was it. For me, it was better to write them down. The people I questioned, for them, it was more painful because I had to go back to my parents, my surviving uncles and aunts, and people they knew. So whoever they spoke to, and then they came back with the stories. I think for them it must have been painful, and for which I kind of apologize now. I did not realize maybe at that time. Uh, of course, I mean the sadness is there for them as well. But if when I ask them, they also say the same thing, that it's better that people know about it. We never talked about it all this time, so might as well. It's more like that now.
Right, right. So it's a mix of a little bit of happiness, but more of pain actually coming out on the surface.
Yeah, to remember all those events must have been difficult. But the way my stories have been written, I did not want them to be very gory, or because that is something that we already know. We know that partition was not an easy thing. But and what we know are the numbers, the statistics. These many number of people moved, these many died, lost homes, lost their kids. What I mean, everything is a number at the end of the day. I wanted to bring stories of ordinary people, what they went through, and despite everything, there was still some amount of humanity, which probably helped them survive and do what they could do. So
Right.
for me, I think that spirit of humanity essentially needed to come across.
And your stories are only about Indians?
No, it's see the pain is the same. People who moved from either side of the border, they left their home, they left their loved ones, they left their lives behind. So I don't think that one or the other you can distinguish between the pain of the two. So the common denominator, I think, is how they feel. I have tried so far. There are 24 stories. I think almost equally divided from both sides. Almost equally, I would say.
Right. So it is from people from India as well as people from Pakistan,
Yes.
whose stories are shared in your book.
Yeah.
Right. Shivani, when people decide to separate, when countries decide to partition, is it just geography that they are leaving behind, or is it much more than what others can see?
It's way more than anybody can imagine. For the leaders, for the administration, or whoever takes the call, for them maybe it's just a line that they draw. If even if you look at how the Radcliffe line came into picture, it was pretty random. It was done by somebody who had no idea about the geography, in fact. And yet so many lives were affected and are still getting affected. I mean, all these years, somewhere we are still reeling with the effect of that partition. So I don't think that it's as simple as drawing a line, and it's not even about geography. More or less, I think, when countries divide, the geography more or less, in fact, does not change. It is the rest of the milieu that changes. Your familiar corners, your house, your favorite corner in the house where you used to sit, the trees that you leave behind. Even if you get the same mango trees across the border, it's not your mango tree. It's like that. I mean, I don't know. I have for my entire life, I have heard my grandmother tell us, "This is not the way we used to have." Well, what are you eating? This is not the way we used to have during our time or back then. So everything was like it used to go back all those years, and the dates and the mangoes and everything was still afresh in their memories. And I don't think it's even about food or anything. It's those feelings which are very difficult to understand. And even at the outset, I don't think people can really predict where this will take them and what difference it's going to bring in their lives. It's very, very difficult to predict. Not an easy decision at all. I mean, for better or for worse, people have to take certain calls, but they are never easy. I don't think so.
Right. Separation is never easy in
It's never
any
easy.
way and form.
Absolutely. I mean, you've invested your time, your energy, you have relationships there, you have to leave them just like that. How is it even possible to forget all of it?
Shivani, is it true that even today, refugee's child is a label that is actually used in society?
Maybe not now for me, I would say, but when I was growing up, this must be the 1980s. So even till 1980s, if I've been referred to as the refugees, the one who belongs to the refugees house. My grandparents had lived in that house for almost 20 years, more than that probably, and yet they were still being referred to as refugees in that colony. And for me, that was quite a shock in a way because it was a very different world. We used to live in Delhi, so nobody would call me that there. But when we used to go back to my grandparents' house, so people who knew my grandparents, my identity was because of them. And I never knew that they were still being referred to as refugees. I did not know the meaning of the word. It's much later. And as a child, you just know by the tone that there is something not right about it. And you don't talk about you never ask your elders because you just know instinctively that this was something was not right the way it was said. So I just carried it knowingly, unknowingly for a long time until I realized what it meant. And I know that it's not a bad word, definitely not a bad word. But the fact that they had assigned that identity to me, I still find it very odd. So I'm sure that people who keep moving, the immigrants who are forced to move across all over the world, people are doing that. I'm sure that they go through the same. So the wound is raw for a long time after it has been inflicted, I think.
Yes, yes. And it is not just about India or, our refugees. It's about the rest of the world. Entire world, still faces situations like this. What would you say to people or children, who are being referred to as refugees or refugees' children? Do you have any advice for them?
I think I have an opinion for everything. I'm suddenly realizing that. See, as I said that I was just carrying the label knowingly or unknowingly. But when I looked around and I looked around my family, the families that were associated with us or the ones that I knew who had moved, there is something common that I found, which was their perseverance, the hard work, and the grit. So all of them must have started from scratch. They left everything back there. Everything, I mean, except the clothes that they were wearing, and they probably had hours to pack up. How much can you pack up in 2 or 3 hours? You can't pack up your entire life. You'll probably carry some valuables. You'll be worried about your kids, your family, maybe some utensils. That's all that they came with. And most of it was lost on the way because they had to keep it light. So to start from scratch and to be able to rebuild an entire life, to educate their children, I mean, and in turn, like how we have turned out. If they would have just sat down and thought about their bad luck or whined about it or cribbed about it, I don't think I'd be here talking to you today. So for me, I think being a refugee's child is supposed to be a badge of honor. It's like those scar marks that you have, you're very proud of them because you've gone through a certain agony and you've survived that. So I think for me that it stands for that courage. I'm very proud of it now, in fact. I very proudly tell people that yes, I am a refugee's child, and I'm glad because I know what it means. I value life more. I have more gratitude than most people around me who've had more comfortable lives. And I mean, I'm grateful for every moment that I get to have. In fact, I remember that when I came to Hong Kong, I was quite upset because I had lost my friends and everything, and that is the time I think when I remembered my grandparents the most. Because for me, it was a very planned move. My husband's company had taken care of everything. We had a nice house. The daughter was in a good school. I mean, things were taken care of. It was quite a dream of a move, and yet I was being whiny and I was being bitter about it until the day I realized that I am so much better than what they must have gone through. So if they could make it, I'm in a much better situation, and I think that's what it means to me now.
Right. And you're so right. We're also lucky that we never had to, do
Yes,
anything in those kind of situations, in difficult,
absolutely
partition kind situations.
true.
Shivani, you sound so much like an overcomer and a doer. Yeah, you continuously reinvent yourself with, moving situations, changing life, situations. Do you have any top three, points that you would advise all of us to succeed in any area of life?
To be able to succeed in any area, I don't know, 3 points. I don't know if I can really put it that way, but yes, don't look at closed doors for a very long time. If certain doors have been closed, there has to be some sort of an opening that is going to lead you towards. It sounds very very cliched, but it's very true. Something or the other happens if you are open to chances, open to taking those chances. So be courageous. Don't whine and don't crib about it for long, because it's not going. I can understand. I mean, I do that. I go through those phases where I crib, where I miss medicine like anything. When COVID struck, I mean, I did not know that we are in for 2 years of life like this, but I definitely missed the lab. I missed everything about it. But having said that, how long can you sit and crib? Is something that you really need to take. You need to decide about it. Opportunities will never come to you. You have to go towards them. So ask and you shall receive is something that I follow literally as a mantra. Unless you ask for it, unless you put your hand across, you are not going to get it. So don't just sit there. Be very very open. Life gives us enough opportunities, and there is enough space under the sun for everyone, I feel. So don't be insecure either. It will come to you if you deserve it. Just be very sure as to what you want and what you might be good at. So identify your strengths, I would say. Be courageous, as I said, and don't look at the closed doors for long. I think that's three things now.
Such wise words, actually. Very practical advice, for
Thank you.
success or for anything in life. It was such a pleasure talking to you, Shivani. I feel so nice, after this chat. Thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dipti. Thank you for having me and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.